Hey, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. Riddle here. We're going to do a little combination of talking about a current issue that I have experienced something firsthand with and checking out the garden. First, I scored these two Concord grape vine starts at a grocery outlet, so I have to find a sunny enough place in my yard because we're surrounded by redwoods, and it's always a challenge to get down enough branches and finding a place that's warm and sunny enough to get a tree or a vine to produce fruit. So before the pandemic hit, it's the beginning of a protea flower just getting ready to form. Before the pandemic hit, there was on the mountain here, there's a family whose third generation, they go back over 100 years, and their great-grandfather actually ran cattle over the mountain here, and they have 150 acres, and the entire family lives on the property. The mother's very educated, she's a lawyer. The father has deceased because the mother's well into her 70s, very, very brilliant. She's a environmental lawyer. All the adult children live on the compound, and they have, like, I don't know, 7 cabins, I think, and some small livestock, some pigs and some cows and some great gardens. And the adult son, who's around close enough to my age, is, being preened to take over the family's land and the responsibilities, because they rent several of these cabin structures to people on the compound there on the land. Well, then they had this idea that they would put up a yurt. And this is, we live in a mild enough climate, and if you can get around the laws because you have enough land, you can actually rent a yurt, and people will pay to live in a tent with very basic, like super basic needs, or what's the word I'm thinking of here? Water, heat, these type of things. And you can charge $800 to $1,000 for someone to live in a tent here. That's how crazy the rent has gotten. So everyone hikes this trail that goes a good 4 or 5 miles over the mountain and through private property, and it goes through the family's property I was talking about. And all of a sudden this yurt appeared several years ago, and a bunch of kittens, and we really wanted some new cats. So we cruised up to it, and there was a young man in his early 30s, nice looking kid, and kind, but obviously we caught him. He was just waking and baking. So that was the first, for me, it's always a red flag. People say that marijuana isn't addictive and is harmless, but I've seen a lot of people's lives, perhaps not ruined, but definitely limited by the abuse of smoking too much. So we had a lot of common denominators, this kid and I. He loved plants. He was an arborist. He worked really hard. And his father had never been in his life. He actually went to meet his father. He restarted his life in Thailand with another woman, had some more kids. And I guess the woman was really unkind to, let's just call him Frank. Unkind to Frank. So, it's pretty obvious. It's just he was an economic threat to, her. She felt he was an economic threat to her children. So as I got to know Frank a little better, I realized that he had an extreme poverty mentality, because he had this talent, but it was so rare that he was sober. He was consistently stoned out of his mind. I don't know if I ever actually got a chance to talk to Frank when he was in a sober state. And I just had to ask myself, what level of pain is going on in this young man's life that he just can't face life sober. And because of his talent and because of his overall personality, I tried to say, you could totally be an entrepreneur. Someone's paying you 15, 20 bucks an hour, and your body's already wearing out being an arborist and a laborer and a grunt. I said, I know so many people that would pay good money to have you actually come and care for their trees, not just chop and blow, because that's what most gardeners do here. They don't have any real talent for growing things. They're just landscape people. And he was really adverse to the idea of having any kind of freedom, financial freedom, or power. His response to me was, well, somebody has to be the grunt or the slave. And I couldn't help but to think that the lack of love from his father and a lack of good parenting had brought him to this place of hiding out in the mountains, which is what he really wanted to do. He really was just trying to stay self-medicated and hide from the world. And I was a little aggressive with him and very honest with him, and he hated that. It just was, he pretty much made it really clear that he just wanted to be left alone and to hide out in his medicated, doped out reality in his yurt up in the mountains. So I let go and stopped pushing, for a friendship. And I stopped pushing, trying to give him some advice to get him to grow and heal a little bit. And then COVID came along, and so could tell that things were changing up there, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And then all of a sudden, he was just gone. He was gone. So I got a chance to talk to his landlord, the landowners. I had he and his wife over for dinner. And this is what he told me. He told me that Frank's mom, who, she kind of like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, if you know what I mean. She was also really struggling financially and seemed to have a lot of odd beliefs and quirks. For a short time, she fell off the rails and was living in the yurt with Frank. And then they had both convinced themselves that the government was coming for us all. And when they got us, they were going to use the immunization to put the chip in us. But they were also going to round us all up in these camps. Now, this is that crazy-ass QAnon bullshit that is literally ruining people's lives, because you have this niche part of society who are underemployed, undereducated, and really, really feel like they've been forgotten. They really, really feel used and abused. And instead of empowering themselves with facts and pulling it together, they choose to live and perpetuate this fantasy world. It is literally a fantasy world, but it's not just like I believe in this. These two people had lived in this community their entire lives. All their friends were here, all their resources were here, and they literally picked up and moved to the middle of nowhere, somewhere where did they say? New Mexico, Oregon, where they have no resources, no friends, and they're hiding out from this invisible enemy and threat. And at the same time, through their ignorance, are threatening not just their own health and well-being, but possibly the health and well-being of people who come in contact with them because of their non-science hysteria around getting immunized for COVID. So, when you see these stories online and you look at these fringe groups, and the crazy lies they spread on the internet, you really have to say, where does the line of freedom of speech begin and end? Because should speech be based in truth and facts? You know, what's the line? What's the difference between spreading hysteria to people who don't, to the vulnerable, be it mentally or financially, people who are susceptible to believing this type of hysteria, and then taking action on it? You know, the action through violence, if you look at Pizzagate, and action like picking up their whole lives, alienating friends, ruining themselves financially because they're just literally caught up in nonsense. So where is that fine line with the internet, what we allow people to, share in the way of information versus just lies? Yeah, look at some of these YouTube channels. There's this guy, this long red-haired guy. He used to be so funny. Oh, what's his name? Well, he's really popular, and he used to be really clever. But now he's become this nonsensical right-wing dictator. And it's just so sad because I thought he was intelligent, but the information and just the nasty bullshit he's perpetuating on his channel now, it's not even based in fact. And people think he's hysterical because they're as lazy as he is and avoiding critical thinking and gathering facts. So he gets people riled up, or he reinforces their opinions, because really it's just an opinion if it doesn't have any facts to back it up. And he's found his money. He's found his rather large ignorance-based fan base. And it's scary. It's scary that people will accept lies if it's those lies that support their belief system. So that's terrifying, because when you look throughout history and when you look at events that happened, like witch burning or the Holocaust, or it was when the population tipped and swayed in favor of some type of insane leadership and insane ideas, where they lost grip with facts and they lost grip with reality. So I don't find these people cute or entertaining, and I don't know if that should be a freedom that's allowed to poison our culture. Okay, so that's my true story about COVID virus mania, or vaccine mania, that I should say. Don't get caught up, kids. Yes, I've been half vaccinated. I'm still alive. The government's not controlling my mind. They haven't rounded me up. Everything's gonna be fine. Just try to trust in science. Okay, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other, because I believe how we treat each other on the streets is our ultimate reality.